views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Bronxnet or the program underwriters.
It is great to see all of you here on this beautiful, beautiful Tuesday evening. I am Reverend Althea Taylor. I am one of the co-lead pastors here at Bronx Bethany Church of the Nazarene, and it is my delight for us to be able to host this meeting this evening, and that all of you set the time aside to be here for what I believe is an important gathering. Bronx Bethany Church of the Nazarene has been in this community for 54 years. I'm happy to say I've been here almost all of those years. And I've watched this neighborhood change from when I was a little girl to what it is today. And I can honestly say that I still love my neighborhood. This is my neighborhood. I'm a Bronx girl. And I'm delighted, and I hope you feel as strongly about the Bronx as I do about the Bronx. It's a great place. I know that some of you might be here from other parts of the city, but I make no apologies for being a Bronx girl. I love the boogie down. So I welcome you to the Bronx. I welcome you to my beloved church, where we are committed to being a church that is in the community, for the community, with the community. And this occasion here tonight is one of the ways in which we demonstrate our allegiance to make sure that those who come here and worship here on a Sunday morning don't just live a spiritual life on a Sunday, but they live a life that is engaged in the world that is around them. Because if we work for our city to be a beloved city, if our city prospers, so too shall we. That's what the scriptures tell me, and that's what I believe. At this time, I'm going to invite all of you to stand with me. We're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you haven't done this in a long time, tonight's a good time to start again. And if you've done it before, then if you're able to stand, would you stand with me, please? Flag is here on your left, my right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I'm going to invite my colleague and one of the ministers here on staff, the Reverend Andy Rubin, to come at this time and to lead us in an invocation, and then I will come back and introduce the reason why we're here tonight. All right? Pastor Andy.
Let us pray. Dear God, the living God, who is the God of nations, cities, and communities. Thank you, Lord God, for the privilege that we can gather here tonight. Lord God, to engage in discussions, to dialogue, because we are all concerned about the welfare and the prosperity of our city. We pray for every official that is here tonight, oh God, and we ask, God, that for your blessings upon this meeting. We pray, God, that it will be productive, it would be fruitful, and God, at the end of it all, we would all be able to say it was good to be here. So we invoke your presence in this place. For whether two or the three are gathered in your name, you are very much engaged in all that we would do today. So we thank you and we bless you in Jesus' name. Amen.
New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer has spent his career in public service, fighting to ensure that every New Yorker has an equal opportunity to make it in this great city. He's been a champion for the $15 minimum wage, an advocate for affordable housing, and has worked to strengthen our city's fiscal strength while promoting open and transparent government. Comptroller Stringer was born and raised in Washington Heights and was elected to the New York City State Assembly in 1992, where he represented the West Side for 13 years. In 2006, he was elected Manhattan Borough President, and in 2013, he was elected the Comptroller for New York City. Now, some of you may be asking, what does the Comptroller have responsibility for? I'm so glad you asked that question. Comptroller Scott Stringer and his staff, just to name a few of the things, we don't have time to name everything that they do, but they oversee the resolution and settlement of claims that are filed against or on behalf of the City of New York. They enforce the prevailing, the living, and the minimum wage laws on work sites that receive funding from New York City government. They provide certificates of residence to qualified residents who are living within the 5 boroughs of New York City so that they can take advantage or have access to tuition-free higher education. They work to develop innovative solutions to expand economic opportunities for all and focus on assisting minority and women-owned businesses to successfully compete for public and private sector procurements that keep diversity at the heart of how New York City does business. And they provide EFT, electronic fund transfers, for retired New York City employees who receive pensions, making their funds more readily accessible to them. There are a list, as I said already, of many more services that the Comptroller's Office provides and that they are responsible for. And you can find out all of this information and so much more on their website, but these are just a few. Without any further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce to some and to reintroduce to others the New York City Comptroller, Scott Stringer. Would you please help me in welcoming him?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Reverend Taylor, for that wonderful introduction and starting us off. Reverend Rubin, I want to say to all of you, I'm so grateful to be here, and I hope, Reverend Taylor, you would travel with me around the city because you really set the stage tonight. And I want to say to all the partnering organizations who brought so many people out, thank you very much. I'm going to shout you out as the night goes on. We're here to have a very important community conversation, and part of my job as controller, in addition to what was mentioned by Reverend Taylor, is I do the auditing and investigating. We manage a $195 billion retirement system. We make sure that we use our economic analysis to fully put forth the notion that the people in this city that struggle with rent, that struggle with unaffordability, are the very people in a community who built the neighborhood in the first place. And that is why I'm here tonight, to hear directly from you. I first want to start out and acknowledge just a horrific act of violence that so many of you are here tonight to discuss and understand. Junior Guzman Velez is somebody who lost his life in the most tragic way. And I just want to say to all of you that we have a sense that we are not whole until we finally figure out how to get these guns off the streets and figure out a way to protect all of our children. For me, like many of you, this is very personal to me. A little bit about me: I grew up in Washington Heights. I got married very late in life at the age of 51. I now have a 6.5-year-old son, Max, and I have a 5-year-old son, Miles. No, they're not my grandchildren now. They're actually my, I know what you were thinking. You know, in church, you know, on a Sunday I say this and people go, amen, are you okay? No, I'm not okay. I haven't slept in 6 years. But like many of you who are here tonight, you're not here for yourselves. You're here because of the children. Your children, your grandchildren, but I think a lot of you are here for the children we're never going to know or meet. The children who are living in homeless shelters, the children who live in dangerous conditions. Believe it or not, in this all-powerful city, so many of the kids are not eating right, and they don't have enough to eat, and parents are really struggling. So tonight is really about not just to play to the crowd, but to somehow find solutions to some of these problems and some of these issues. I believe very much that for me, growing up in Washington Heights, and my parents living in the Bronx, graduating from John F. Kennedy High School in Kingsbridge, I remember back in the day in the 70s when the city was on the edge of bankruptcy, when we barely were going to make it, people thought the city was finished. But a lot of pioneers, many in this room, didn't give up on New York, didn't leave, didn't go away, didn't run to the suburbs. People stayed in the Bronx and Washington Heights, and they fought through the tough times and built magnificent communities, integrated housing, showed the way for raising a generation of New Yorkers. It was tough back then. The Bronx was burning. Son of Sam kept kids in the house. My mother said, if you take the 8 train, please, son, find the conductor and stay there. Do you remember those days? 2,000 murders a year. We all remember it. And somehow we all got through it. But today, what's really wrong is the very people who lived through that time period, who raised and built the community, are the very people who are being forced out of their own neighborhoods. Speculators coming in and saying it's our turn to take over a community. People are being pushed out because we're letting developers build 30-story buildings in the name of affordable housing. And it's not working. LaGuardia built public housing in 1938. It was not poor people housing, it was housing that would get you to the middle class. In the 50s and 60s, we built the greatest housing program, the Mitchell-Lama program, for working people and middle-class people. In the 80s, when we had abandonment, the city actually took abandoned buildings. They didn't give it to developers, they gave it back to the people and said to community-based organization, build your neighborhoods. Today, we have a housing plan that's much different than we've ever seen. It's a compact with for-profit developers. You get to build what you want, but we need affordable housing. It sounds good until you realize that the housing they're building in the Bronx is unaffordable for people in the Bronx. So why are we letting them get away with this? We need Mitchell-Lama too, and we got to get there. I did an audit of all the vacant property in New York City. There's 1,150 vacant parcels of land. Hundreds of vacant parcels in the Bronx. Why don't we give that land to community-based organizations? Build the housing that we need for the next generation, for the people who are being pushed out. That's what I believe. But more importantly tonight, it's not about what I think, it's about what you think. And I'm here tonight with our deputy controllers. They're going to introduce themselves briefly, and then folks, it's on you. We're going to have a lot of elected officials come by. One of the great ones, Andy King, I know is at a couple of meetings, but he will be here. Neva's here, so, but where Andy's going to be here. Senator Bailey's going to be here. Hi. You know, that's the thing about Andy King. Once you say his name, he's at the community meeting. Let's give it up for Andy King. Andy and I go way back, and tonight we're going to partner at this meeting. So when we talk, jump up, and we're going to hear from Andy. So let me just, Andy, and I didn't realize you were, I saw Neva, I didn't see. Let's start with the deputy controllers and what they do. So I may ask them to answer some questions tonight. Wendy, tell them what you do.
Wendy Garcia, I'm the Chief Diversity Officer, and I oversee access to women and minority-owned businesses.
Lisa Flores, Deputy Comptroller of Contracts and Procurement. We oversee review and register over 20,000 contracts from city agencies on a fiscal year, make sure that everything's done appropriately and that the contracts have been let fairly and devoid of corruption.
Louder.
Preston Niblack, Deputy Controller for Budget. We help the Controller oversee the city's $90 billion budget every year.
Andy King, who you'll hear from in a minute.
Andy King, I work for you.
Good evening. Great to be back in the Bronx.
Louder.
Michael Lambert, Deputy Comptroller for Public Affairs, the Office of New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer.
Good evening. Marjorie Landa, I'm Deputy Controller for Audit and Investigation, and we audit and investigate city government.
She wants to hear from you tonight. Andy, you want to say something, Councilman?
First, I just want to welcome everyone again. As we do in the North Bronx, people pay attention to people who participate. Thank you all for participating tonight. I know we've had long days and getting to this morning. You cannot hear me. Can you hear me now? Oh, stand up? I can do that. I can stand up. Good afternoon, family. Good afternoon, family. Good evening, family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Bethany. Welcome to the North Bronx. Welcome to the 12th District. More importantly, welcome home. I just want to say thank you all for participating. As I've always said to the controller, we here in the North Bronx, we participate. Why? Because people pay attention to people who participate. And we participate, we vote, we stay engaged, and we take care of our neighborhoods. So I want to thank the controller for organizing us all to come out tonight to have a conversation about some of the challenges that we're having. Because we in the North Bronx, while all across the Bronx there are challenges, but in the North Bronx there's some great things, there's some good things happening, and woe is not the world each and every day. But while we're talking and asking questions, remember that we are happy as well as when we're dealing with the issues that are confronted before us, and together we will resolve them, together we will continue to move forward, and together we will stay strong. Thank you, Mr. Controller, for us having a great conversation and starting this off tonight. God bless.
All right, thank you, council member. And so here's like the ground rules. It's open mic, none of you are selected. Anyone can come, everyone has come. Please line up, there's a microphone over here. If there's a microphone over here, and we will alternate. I ask people to try to ask a question. If you wanna make a speech, that's okay, just make a short speech. Okay. Anyone who wants to ask a question, come on up. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me now? Yes. Okay, good. My name is Miss Evans, and I am the owner of Eyes of Power. And I am also a member of Community Board 12. And so there are two issues that I want to briefly address. One is that, there are a lot of different things that happen in Community 12. And what I'm finding is that, because I walk a lot, I'm a walker, and I go into different organizations, I talk to people because I want to know what's going on, and I want to know what's happening in my community, and I also want to know how can I really, really help. And just briefly, back in November, there was a young man that was murdered in my building. And as a trauma-informed care expert, when I tell you that the impact it had on me was devastating. And I thought about my neighbors because my building was so quiet, no one was moving. And regardless to how I was feeling, I know that to be silent sufferers. And I did something about that. And I'm looking for people, politicians, everyone, to come on board and support what I'm doing. It's a program, it's a pilot program, Neighbors Helping Neighbors in Trauma-Embedded Communities. Because we need that. We need to be there for one another. So that's one issue. The second one is, I'm also a certified MWBE with the city, the state, New York, and New Jersey Port Authority. And I've had my company for going on 5 years. And I put together a team, and we were selected for a bid. I'm not gonna dive too deep into that. What I would like to see is MWBEs, some type of policy that protects us, some type of protection, because what's happening is that as MWBEs, it may be a part of that RFP, but once that intent to award is there, the prime is beating us out our fair share, but me, I'm not having that. So I'm letting it be known, but I'm pushing and I'm fighting for that, because I think that someone needs to be there, that they're overseeing that once a proposal is registered, that the prime can now not come in and invite all of their friends and the MWBE.
So let me do this. First of all, let me start with the question of women and minority-owned businesses.
Okay.
You're absolutely right about saying you're certified, you have a business, but at the end of the day, you don't get the contract. You are not alone. The city spends $21 billion a year on procurement. We hire law firms, small businesses, food vendors. But of that $21 billion spend on contracts, 4.9% go to women and minority-owned businesses. 4.9%. When we came into office, we couldn't believe it. And so I hired the city's first ever chief diversity officer, Carol Wallace, and now Wendy Garcia. We also literally looked at 31 agencies covered under Local Law 1. And we identified the actual spend with African Americans, Latinos, Asian, and women. We cataloged each agency. We gave the city a D. We failed all these agencies. Fast forward to today, and we have moved the city for increased spending. We have made incredible strides in this space. But here's the bottom line, and I've said this to the mayor. You must appoint a chief diversity officer for the city that reports directly to the mayor, and you have to have a chief diversity officer in every agency. Because just because you're certified and you play by the rules doesn't mean that the old boy network in the agency wants to see new people get that contracts. Now, why does that matter? It just doesn't matter to you. It matters to the Bronx and the community. Because if you do not have more MWBE participation in contracts, then you cannot create wealth in the community. And that's what we're fighting for. So I agree with you. Wendy, do you want to talk about NWBE University?
Sure. I mean, I would just add that we just launched last year a series of workshops educating MWBEs on the policy and procedures that are impacting them. And I would actually invite you, if you have time, on Thursday, we're going to have some focus groups with MWBEs who want to give recommendations to the city of New York. So we're going to be intaking that. You can do it over the phone as well if you can't come in person. And we will be including all your thoughts inside of our letter grade report that we release every year around October.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Hello.
Hi.
Mrs. Stringer. How
Hello.
are you doing? My name is Lucia Bowles-Wilson. I am a senior. I'm a former resident of Community Board 12. However, I work in Community Board 12 as a volunteer. Okay, I'm a legal certified trainer for RAIN, Bronx Health Corps, and I was nominated Volunteer of the Bronx and the city. My problem is now, I don't live in 12, but I live in Community Board 9. So as I travel from Community Board 9 and 12 back and forth, my problem that with my walker, every block, I'm about to fall. The reason for this is that the city of New York has so much construction. I don't mind them doing construction. They even did it on They Read, where I was a former member at that senior center. On They Read, they had a project going from Murray Lane all the way over to White Plains Road. But we know what they didn't do? They didn't do the sweep. The sweep is taking the tar and the gravel and the rocks and the pebbles and cleaning the sidewalks, because I have lost a walker already. This is a new walker, but let me explain something. This is happening all over. When I get off the bus to go home or where I pass any street, the gravel is so intense that I almost fell. Now, when I fall, that's a knee replacement and a head injury on concrete.
So what's your question?
My question is, when are they going to do the sweep and clean up? Because they do the work, but when the work is over, they don't come back and do the sweep. And this is happening all over the Bronx. It's also happening in the city of Manhattan. You know, and I go there.
Okay, let me, Councilman, do you want to?
Lucille?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for participating. And now what I want you to tell me, because the area you're referring to up on Neareen, I'm just saying the area that you're referring to on Neary, I want you to make sure that you connect, that's Cohen's district, but I want you to make sure that you connect and identify every location. We can identify every location. So what we have to do, because a lot of people who got construction jobs, who got the contracts with us, they do a poor job of cleaning up when they do work. And I struggle with it too. I know what you're referring to. So I'm saying to you.
About just they leaving. I don't need a mic. I'm talking about the entire Bronx. Every place where they have done construction, and I travel the Bronx because I'm the, you know what I am. And my job is, I take a lot of paperwork.
Yes.
I record everything. So it's the entire Bronx. It is also Manhattan. And I don't go to Brooklyn. Yet. But since I am part of the city.
So you're absolutely right,
All right,
along
let
with the controller. Okay.
I hear you. One of the things that we could look at, working with the councilman, is looking at some Bronx locations. We can identify who those developers are. They can't just, a lot of them are not even from the Bronx, and they have to clean what they started. If you give them to us tonight, we will check on them tomorrow.
Okay, no problem. I got it.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Alfred Grant. I'm from, can you hear me?
Yeah.
From District Council 37, Local 420, North Central Bronx Hospital. And I'm also of DC 37's political action. That's why I was at the city council when you gave the report about the city hospital system. And the thing is that I want to give thanks to Councilman Andy King and Richie Torres for the survival that they implanted in North Central with labor and delivery. The thing is this, and here's my concern, since I live in the neighborhood, not only work in the neighborhood, but the thing is, I see the people, and I see the needs of the people is a city hospital. And so, therefore, I remember that the last report, that it looked bad because of, I believe, and I always admit I can be wrong, but there were other individuals that ran the Health and Hospitals Corporation that gave gloomy outputs on the situation of the banking, the money of HHC. But I see a glimmer of hope in Michael Katz. And I'm hoping that he can work with you, because he has come to the city council, he has come to labor, and the thing about it is that I'm hoping that, like, we know there's money. Sometimes it dissipates and they say we ain't got none, but there's money out there. You, the controller, tell us, tell him where the money is.
Well, first of all, it's in the bank. I want to put that out there, but you're right about Michael Katz, and now it's H&H, and the health and hospital system has had some financial difficulty, but to the credit of the mayor and to the executives and to DC 37, there has been a way forward. We've had a setback with the Trump administration and trying to implode our health care and that financing. The city has not been afraid to act just as budget time. The city council, Andy King, and the city, when we needed the $300 million, it was there, and a plan was formulated. We now have to create another plan, and part of what I'm doing is assessing where the weak spots are to make sure that H&H and our public hospitals are as strong as ever. These are the hospitals that people go to. These are the hospitals that save lives, and these are the hospitals that take care of our children. And I assure you that working with Henry Garrido, working with H&H and Michael Katz, I'm going to be in the room making sure that this hospital system is fiscally solvent. You're right, the city has a lot of money, but there's a lot of people who are trying on a federal level to take our money away. The state wants it, the feds want it. The more we save, the more they want. But we have to put it aside for our workers in the hospitals. They take care of our parents and grandparents and our children. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Bronx. Mr. King, thank you. I want to start by saying one of your employees, Ms. Dela Cruz, she does a really nice job. She's always showing up at meetings. So she represents you very, very well. So, but I know...
By the way, you notice she gets more applause than I do, and I don't flinch. You see, I've evolved as a politician.
But I know the congressman was one of the supporters of this or sponsors of this town hall. And I want to make you aware of a hardship, a financial hardship that the Muslim community is going through. And it's not, you can't compare it to any other immigrants because there is no embassy in the country of Yemen. There is no consulate. I have family members, a lot of our members here have family members in Yemen they want to bring to America, but because of the ban, they are affected. And those families have to go to different countries in order to petition to come to the US. And we have the members here. Anyone affected by the Muslim ban, please stand up. So these are members, every single one of them is affected. And Mr. Zaid Nagy, he's here. His mother just interviewed and her visa was denied. She cannot come to the US. She's been in the country of Jordan for 3 years waiting to come to America, and her visa has been denied, and he's been paying rent in America and in Jordan. Just like all these people here, they pay rent, whether it's Egypt, Malaysia, Jordan. We are struggling. We pay double the rent, and hopefully the congressman and the city, I know the mayor is trying his best, but we are struggling financially. We have a financial hardship, and our community is struggling, and we're asking for your help.
Now, first of all, thank you for being here and showing your strength in the Bronx. We live in a time that I never thought we would ever see again. Not only are they denying people the right to come to our country because of your religion and your beliefs or a country you come from, but it's even gotten worse. They now separate children from parents. And I have been at 26 Federal Plaza when a young woman does not know where her husband is to find out that he's been shipped to Texas in the middle of the night. We've been in El Barrio and places in the Bronx where we don't know where separated children are and their parents can't find them in the United States of America. This is happening all over the country, and it's happening, believe it or not, right here in New York. I am proud that you were here. And let me say this. Yeah.
We had a member of the community that he's from Louisiana, but he committed suicide due to the financial hardship. His family is stranded in Djibouti now. He was waiting to bring them. The visa was denied. He committed suicide.
So let me
now
say,
his family has nowhere to go.
So let me say this. We are prepared to work with you to make sure the resources are available, whether it's legal, whether it's sustenance, to make sure that the community is protected. Obviously, the struggle against the federal government is a real one. We work on this every day. I want to just remind everyone that whether you're a Muslim or Mexican, wherever you come from, without immigrants in New York City, and let me just, because we sometimes play defense, let's play offense. The reason New York City is an economic powerhouse is because of immigration. That's a fact. You just want to hear some controller numbers, right? Because this is not for debate. You know, if Trump was here, I'd be like, dude, what are you doing? Without immigration, we would not have the contribution. Do you know what the immigrant communities generate in terms of income every year? In New York City alone, $100 billion. That's a lot of taxes. The immigrant communities today are in the arts, are in medicine. It's throughout our city economy. And so we have a moral right to protect people, but also financially, Trump is committing suicide for this country by banning the intellectual capacity and capability and creativity of our Muslim community and everywhere else. And I just want to say to some people who sometimes take issue with what I say, people have to understand, and I've had to say this to people who I know, when they come for Muslims, they're coming for me. You know, we Jews don't do so well, right? So I always say, when they come for me, I got to be with you, and you got to be with me. And that's true with everyone in this room who have experienced discrimination and intolerance and bigotry. We must stand united. I'm glad you're here because this community in the Bronx stands with your community tonight. Is that true? Let's hear that. Thank you.
Good evening to you. My name is Pius Bugembe. I work and live in the Bronx. And I just want to thank whoever was behind organizing this. And when I was receiving the invitation, the flyer, they said, you need to go to the meeting because Bronx people don't go to meetings, and that's why education is not funded. I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. And therefore, my council member, our chairman, Mr. Andy, had informed all of us, even in my neighborhood, I believe this room would have been small. He used to send us also, news from his desk. I haven't received any since this year, so I don't know what is happening, Mr. Andy King, in regard to that. Communication is needed for us to go forward.
That's right. All right. That's right.
My question. I know, Mr. Scott Stringer, that you take care of big organizations or community-based organizations that presumably require a whole lot of funding to be implemented. But I'm just asking, I'm in charge of a youth group, church-based, in the Bronx that caters for about 200 youth. And it becomes complicated for us to access any help or donation or grants to be able to exercise our capabilities to help the future generation within the Bronx. So I'm asking, do you, in your office, fund small organizations, community organizations, and if so, how do we access that so that we can start from the village to raise our kids the right way?
So I don't give out the money. I audit the people who give out the money. So the Comptroller's office, unlike a borough president's office or a city council office, we don't have discretionary money. But I like to think that there are other ways that we can make a contribution in a community. We've worked with the church community on a whole lot of tax issues and a lot of ways to make sure that our pastors can minister rather than worry about what's happening with the Department of Finance. And if there are church leaders here tonight who would like to access our office on those issues, that is something that we've helped churches all over the city with, and we have a certain amount of expertise. But I do think that part of what we need to understand is that when we think about what it means to create programs in a community, and it has to do with affordable housing as well, is we also have to go back to something that we have to go back to something that we don't think about in government enough, and that's community-based planning. A lot of decisions have to be made from the bottom up, not from the top down. Andy King, gets that, but you'd be surprised. A lot of city agencies don't know that if you simply do the kind of funding the community wants, you can reduce gun violence, help kids stay off the streets, give them the summer jobs you want, and that's something that we have to do. So I'm here tonight, even though I watch the money, it's important for me to be here listening to you, and that's what I'm trying to do tonight.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mr. Romeo from Young Kingston Quiz Chess Club and Mentoring Program. My main purpose for being here is to stop the violence with our youth. I mentor over 1,700 kids from here to 149th Street and St. Anne's Avenue. I have 986 kids up in the Bronx that I deal with. When I had nothing, I was given something. Now that I got a little something, I'm still giving. My mindset hasn't changed. It's just my situation. So I would like to know, what is the plans that's going to slow down our youth? Because if we don't have a resolution to the problem, we end up being part of the problem, and we end up being the result of the problem. I had two young kids that I work with in schools that had just passed away, two 15-year-olds. One just passed away this Friday, just passed. Some of y'all know who I am because y'all see me teaching chess out there for free, because it's not all about money with me. It's never been about money with me, because money don't define me as a person or my value. It's compassion, kindness, and integrity.
Wow.
But my thing is this: sometimes I could be harsh on people, and sometimes it might be a sin, sometimes it might be a blessing. But I'm straight to the point. I lived around here 40 years. These kids are my heart. When some people see a paycheck, I see a heart. Some people don't work the same way I work. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else, but the point is, anytime I do something, I put 100%, maybe 150%. And I'm sick and tired of these kids getting killed at 13, 14, 15 years old, and the ones that's committing the crimes is 12, 13, and 14, and 15 years old. And everybody says knowledge is power. To me, knowledge is not power. It's possibility. Because it depends what you do with that knowledge will get you to the next level. And people don't understand that. So education can help, but I think our biggest problem is with these kids is decision making. I don't care how much you educate a kid in the classroom. If he don't have the right decision making, he's just going to go out and do anything he has to do.
So that words like that mean a lot, and let me just give you some sense of just what I feel about what we have to do as a city, and we have to start having real conversations with parents, guardians, and grandparents. I think the way you give kids hope is you show them the whole world. And right now, you're right, some of that is in the classroom, but a lot of it's in what happens after the classroom. And for me, we have got to give kids in every community the same opportunities they have to play chess, to have after school, to have real opportunity, because if you could show a kid in the Bronx the high-tech economy and the opportunity that they will have, and if we give them the resources to get there, then they will make that smart decision. The problem today is we have two tiers of education in this city. We have a certain education system where parents of great wealth are able to subsidize the chess program and all those programs, and other parents who love their kids just the same as the others, they gotta work 2 jobs to pay the rent. They love their babies too, but they can't pay that freight. Education's supposed to be free in the city. And I will tell you, that has to change. We have to create a school system that is equal. If you have arts after school on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, you have to have it in the Bronx. If you have a chess game or chess tournaments, right, in Bryant Park in Manhattan, then you have to have it in the Bronx. It's the only way we are going to challenge all of our children. I see it every day as an old new dad. It is tough out there. I worry about it like every parent here, but it's about opportunity as well. So when you look at the Department of Education, you look at schools today, the guidance counselor, the social worker, they're not in the schools. They're all gone.
Nobody knows these. I'm going to be honest with you. Now, can I say something else?
Yeah.
I understand everything that you're saying, but it's all about teaching the kids life skills.
Yeah.
Meaning that, I'm not taking anything away from education. I went to high school, I went to college and everything. But you have to give these kids, you have to have patience for them. You have to have more patience for them than you have for yourself. And a lot of people can't do that. You understand? Because all these kids is, a lot of times, you can hear the warning signs. They reach out to you, but the first thing you do is just turn your head.
So can I just say something about that?
Yes. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to nobody.
No, it's okay.
I worked in after-school programs. I worked in high schools, currently high schools right now, middle schools, and elementary schools. Guidance counselors, deans, social workers, psychologists, and principals don't know these kids more than I know them.
Okay, but
and that's the reason why I would never take a job that's directly working with the education department, because it limits me to what I can do with the kids.
But that what you're saying is we have to also embrace the not-for-profit organizations in the community that's doing the great work you're doing. No questions, and I agree with you.
And I'm gonna end it on this note.
Okay, and I'm glad
I
you're
say
here.
this to teachers all the time. If you're just teaching the kids what you was taught to teach them, then you're not just really teaching them. You're not teaching them because these kids struggle with things at home that you're not going to reach to them by opening up a book. You got to open up their mind. And the best thing to do with that is, I hate to say this, sometimes you have to stab the heart to open up the mind and the brain. Sometimes you got to get people to see
All right, let me
the
do
benefits.
this. You're right, and I commend you for what you're doing. And by the way, chess in the Bronx, around the city, gets kids to that mind because they open up about it, and I wish we could do all these kind of programs for the kids, because at the end of the day, it's going to get them to the economy that they can get not just these kind of jobs, but real jobs, paying real wages, and supporting the community. Councilman, you want to weigh in?
I'm just going to add this, my brother. I know you're doing great work. I see you in Eastchester outside Chester, the schools. In the city council, I fund a program called Chester in the Schools. Let's connect you with them so you can bring your experience and your expertise to the classroom inside our buildings and make sure our children get real on-hand experiences. And to all of us who are in the room tonight, we kind of get it because you showed up tonight, but it takes a village to raise a child. So when you're out there, don't walk past a young brother who has his pants down looking for direction. Don't look past a sister who's yelling and don't know which direction she's going. We have a responsibility in the city of New York. Lack of funding doesn't mean lack of service. So that means you got to do what we got to do because someone gave it to you when you were 9. It's time for you to give it back as well. Thank you.
I want to just mention some of the sponsoring organizations in addition to Councilman King. I want to shout out Tracy Towers Tennis Association, Williamsbridge chapter of the NAACP, Jamaica Progressive League, African Advisory Council, Soundview Residence Council, Bronx Council of the Arts, CB12, Community Board 7 members, Country Club Civic. We have from the Speaker's office, Speaker Heastie, Kevin Riley. I just talked to the Speaker today. Thank you. Jessica Reynoso from Public Advocate James's office. 47th Precinct Council, Emerald Isle Immigration, Community Board 11 members, Community 5 members, 52nd Precinct, oh my God, Jerome Gunhill Bid. Grandparents around the world, they are the best. Now you know who runs the Bronx. Yemeni American Merchants Association. Guns Down, Life Up. District Council 37. Simpson Street Tenant Association. Edenwall Houses. Rain Senior Center. And I'm going to continue to announce people throughout the evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Caroline Jennings. I live on 216th Street between White Plains Road and Barnes Avenue. I believe it was last...
Just a little, if you can, a little louder.
Right. What about now?
Perfect.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. I believe it was last year or maybe 2016. We began to see homeless people around the neighborhood. And this is not against homeless people because people go through. But for us to come out of our homes and never have seen this in our neighborhoods is a shock. On 216th Street, we have a house across from Regent School, which is a private school. My children go there. There was a homeless man sleeping there, and that was a shock. People were walking by like, what is this? You're used to that in Manhattan. I'm not saying that it's a good thing, okay? These are homeowners out here, and we're not rich, middle class, okay? Now, for some reason, to me, this is the way I explain it. It's like taking, say, 2 big air balloons, putting a whole bunch of people in it, and all of a sudden, this year, or just a few, maybe 2 months ago, you see homeless people all over the place. All over. You need to come live on my block. We cannot believe what we are seeing. Yesterday, I was at the rally with Andy King. We can't believe it. At 216th Street, there is a corner store There's a corner store on 216th Street, and he spoke to them. He was strong, and he just spoke that that store has to be closed down. So because of the K2 situation. But what wasn't really addressed enough to me was the homelessness. How did someone just come behind our back and build these buildings, some really nice looking buildings on the outside on White Plains Road between 216 and Gun Hill Road? And I heard that it was for working class, low income, and that they snuck homeless people in. We've got grown men, and it's not the teenagers, it's grown men. I just need to finish, okay? Grown men out there. I also work at Region as the dance teacher, and in the summertime, I don't work for them. I hold my own summer dance program at Emmanuel Church. I have a teenage girl about 20-something years old walking her 8-year-old sister to Emmanuel down 216 between White Plains Road and Willard Avenue. And when those grown men, because there's two homes right there, 216, I keep saying 216 between White Plains Road and Willard. And the man had the nerve to say to her, come over here and be effed by a real man. Okay? And then some man said something to my aunt about something, I'm not gonna say that, you have a nice, her private part, and she had to slap his hands away. My mother owns her home. She's been there over 40 years. People peeing in front of our homes.
No, I hear you.
Get the homelessness out. It's not right.
So let me...
We are suffering, and we want to move, and how can we move when, like my mother, who's 70-something years old, she's had that home forever. How can she afford to move someplace else?
So
this is ridiculous.
So tonight, 62,000 people are going to sleep in homeless shelters. 26,000 are children. The city of New York 4 years ago spent $1.2 billion on homeless services. 4 years later today, the city is spending $2.7 billion. In 4 years, we have spent $1.5 billion, and the homeless population has not been reduced. Part of the problem, in my view, is that we have siloed the agencies. You have Department of Homeless Services working on service, which is needed, but they don't talk to the people who are supposed to build housing to get people out of shelter. The mayor's proposed 90 shelters in the city. It would be great if we could build 90 buildings of housing so that people could get the services and the real housing that they need. We as a city spend $100 million a year putting homeless families into seedy commercial hotels. The audits I've done about the situation in those shelters are so severe when we exposed what was going on, it's no wonder people would sleep on the street. I go and I visit the shelters unannounced. I don't do press conferences. There was one night I was at a shelter, and I swear to God, if you had said to me, where do you want to sleep tonight, this shelter or Rikers? I've been to Rikers too, voluntarily, but you know, I know what you think, politician, of course you have, but the truth is, I would say, take me to Rikers. That's how dangerous it was for the people living in shelters. So whether it's the inside of the shelter, because we have to worry about the children there, or people on the street, we need to have a more comprehensive homeless plan. And that means we need a real plan to reduce homelessness. 30% of people who live in shelters have jobs. They have jobs. How do you live in a homeless shelter when you have a job? Well, you know why? You can't get an apartment on the outside. And that's not right. We have young women, young guys and women living in homeless shelters working because they can't get an apartment. One of the reasons why the rent is too damn high is because the security deposits are too damn high. And I've said we should limit security deposits, we should give people an opportunity to pay them off, and we shouldn't hold people hostage to a $10,000 apartment down payment. Do you agree with that? That's something that we can be doing.
Listen, I hear you, but I'm saying, why did they dump, that's not a nice word, why did they bring a whole bunch of grown men, these are not children, grown men on White Plains Road to 216th Street? That is the problem. And now, Andy, listen to this. Last night, one of the residents said that the street was clear on on White Plains Road. That's because they know they have to stay low. But guess what? 7 o'clock this morning, when I'm leaving the house with my 11-year-old daughter, they're right back across the street at that home that no one has sold, a whole bunch of them. Just staying low for a minute. So I'm not talking about the children, all that. I'm talking about the grown men. You see some grown women, no children. The city has purposely come and put them in our neighborhood. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They need to stop that. They need
Scott,
to
I'm going to ask you a question on record. I'm going to say to you all, I'm going to ask the controller tonight to do an audit of men's shelters that are located in the North Bronx, because the city has quietly in the night opened up men's shelters without having a conversation with anybody, and they've just showed up. So I'm asking you to do an audit so we can identify who are being good neighbors, who are following the rules, because these men are out there. It's not women, unfortunately. It's men that are out there, and they're busted. They smoke in K2, and then they just linger and use the restroom in any place they can find. So if we can find out, because when I've asked, I can't get an address. I can't get an address where they're located. NYPD says, well, they're over there. But when we try to get an address, we can't find that. So I'm asking you.
All right, what I will do based on what I'm hearing tonight is our office will, I don't want to do, if you do an audit, it takes a year and a half, right? So you don't want that. But I will ask Marjorie from our investigative unit if you could just address what that is. And I'm obviously committing to the council member to get that data and to the community. So this is promise number one. Turn the TV cameras up. No. You just want to speak about just how we would do that kind of inquiry. 'Cause people think, oh, do an audit, but an audit it takes a long time, and that's not what you're here to hear tonight.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed this out, because I'm listening to what everybody's saying, and what we do in the audit bureau is we look at systems, we look at services. I'm going to stand up. I can shout. Okay. So we look at systems, we look at services, we look at the way agencies function, and we generally don't look at single instances of what's going on. Investigations, they're quicker, they can go straight to the point. So we have two parts to the audit bureau. Mostly what we do is audits. That's what the Comptroller's office has been doing forever. But when Comptroller Stringer came in, he looked at the charter and said, gee, I can do this investigation thing. Why don't I? And
all right. Hold that. That's what we're going to do. But then Lisa Flores has to sign off on all of the contracts, and that's how we hold DHS and others accountable. Lisa, how would we approach Andy King's request in the community?
Well, in terms of addresses, for any shelter that's not covered by confidentiality, so for instance, a domestic violence shelter would not have the addresses.
And we're not going to give them out.
But a regular shelter, we have all of the addresses when they submit it to us for registration. The issue that you bring up, which is one that we are constantly trying to work with the administration, is that we get contract registration after they've been opened. Right? So, there's supposed to be a process in place in the charter that allows a fair share, right, to see, obviously, what other services are available within the community and what other shelters have been placed in that particular community. But that's not done necessarily either until the shelter is already open. So that's a process that definitely has to be cleaned up from a legal perspective. And oftentimes, it may be operating for a year or two before it even comes to us for registration. So it's an ongoing issue. We hold DHS accountable to the absolute level possible legally within our powers when it comes to registration, on checking certificate occupancies, checking to see if they have violations, and the controller has given us a charge of holding DHS accountable for the safety of those shelters before we register them, and there are many, many contracts for DHS that do not get registered until we have enough documentation as it relates to safety. But we can definitely work on those that have been registered with us. We have the addresses.
And by the way, if Andy and the community board leadership, and if people think it would be helpful for Lisa, but to volunteer you and some of our staff to come meet with you for a night so you know exactly what we can do and also what we can't do, because people think, you know, I can kick in the door and change it. I can't do that, but we can do that. So if you want to go to your office one night, I'll be happy to bring the crew, and so you're better informed about not just what we do, but what can be done. We've done this with other communities around the city, and the only thing I always say to people is, the people who are in homeless shelters struggle every night. They're good people. Their children are good. They deserve better. And we have to work with them as we would want to be treated if we were in a situation. Having said that, we also, the city has an obligation to go to the community leadership and come clean and be honest about a situation to build the trust in the community to solve the problem. Sneaking around a community builds distrust, hurts the people who are struggling, and doesn't do justice for hardworking community people who also want to feel safe in a community. All right, where are we going? Right here. Hello.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for appointing me to Community Board 11, Councilman King. Thank you so very much. I'm just speaking on behalf of education, also noise complaints, as far as hoping
Give me one, because we'll start the time period. I want to make sure I can get everybody.
That's why
Pick one.
I'm just speaking on what I'm saying. It's noise complaints. If you can create a task force just for noise complaints, so that when we have issues, that the police department that have other more important things to do, they can address those issues, because we're going through HE double hockey stick. Above me, below me. There's so many different things that I want to speak on. I can't speak on it now, but I will speak on it after this session is over. But education is also another thing that I'm newly retired from the educational system with special needs children, and even general ed are not learning script. They need to put that back in place.
That is true.
Because the children cannot read script, but they expect them to do a lesson on script work. And if they go to middle school, there's no way in the world they're prepared. So at the last day of work, I'm helping them learn how to recognize it and read it. So please put that back in place. We'll talk later about the other issues that I want to address.
Thank you for your years of service. My office will be contacting you. Every 5-year-old goes like this now, right? They don't, yeah. By the way, we have been, another elected official who's represented tonight is a great member of the United States Congress, and that is Congressman Elliot Engel, represented by Maxine Sullivan. Let's give Maxine a round of applause. It's good to see you. And tell the congressman we know what he's doing in Washington with that guy. I didn't mention the name.
Good evening. Good evening?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is this thing working?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for every coming out. I heard so many good things. My name, and I am Dr. Kevin George Peterson. A lot of you know me from the community. I live in Wakefield since the 60s. I heard a lot of stuff going about what we went through in the past. A lot of us have been here 20, 30, 40 years. All of the issues that I've heard discussed are important to me. I live here. I'm not going anywhere. I love my community. I really do. I heard DC 37. I've been a member for so many years, for a long time. What was the Board of Ed then? Now it's DOE. Same thing, same issues that I've been hearing since I'm a little kid, overcrowded and all that. That's good, and I heard that. Now I'm gonna say one thing about an umbrella statement for myself and my community. One, and I've heard this through a number of people here, I'm so glad we're here. This is exactly where we are supposed to be, because we gotta stand up. Listen, strong backs lifted up. That's what it is. I heard a lot of talk about money and things like that. That money disappears so quick, I be looking at it, yeah, you need an order real quick, because where'd that money go? All of a sudden, millions and billions, strong backs lifted up. Second of all, what I love about this room right here is the diversity. I see the youngsters over there. I love that. I see these young cats. This is where they should be. This is the message they should be getting right here. And another thing, that's where it is.
Do me a favor. Do me a favor. You got a question?
I have a good question.
Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to get everybody. I'm
I
the
have
moderator.
a statement and a question.
You gave the statement. What's the question?
The question is, Well, I said strong backs lifted up. Why not come with solutions instead of problems?
Well, that's why
Why
we're
not
here.
come with solutions? And this is the place to be. And one last question. I do have a grievance against, in our community, Wakefield over here, 216th, there is an issue with graffiti. And there's a spectrum of violence. It starts with spraying on the wall. It starts with a whisper, turns into a shout, turns into a profanity, turns into a hit, turns into a gun, turns into a fatality. We gotta stop it at the beginning.
Yes.
And that's what I,
Yes.
and now how do we get the graffiti and how do we let folks know, hey, calm that down before it becomes a problem?
Great question, and you know something? We will get back to you. Let me say this, sir. If you give me your name and number, we will check out the graffiti problem. And also, anybody tonight who leaves me with a problem that we can't solve tonight, I just want to guarantee you that before noon tomorrow, our office will call you directly. It's guaranteed. Or we'll have new... No, I don't want to say it. So you get a call back, and we will call you before noon on the graffiti to get the information. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Crystal Calindris, and I'm here with Shamira Alvarez. We are Seton Hall law students, and I'm here to discuss a petition that's circulating. It actually collected a substantial amount of Bronxite signatures, so I'm here to represent the Bronxite voice. This petition is inspired by Lisandro Jr. Guzman Feliz, and it's looking to initiate lawmaking action to propose legislation to impose a duty to act to call 911 upon any individual witnessing a child exposed or suffering grave harm, or, if possible, render aid under reasonable and safe circumstances. Our petition is based on California, Missouri, Hawaii, Massachusetts law. And again, this law looks to impose a duty upon individuals. And my question is, who can we speak to, or who can you connect us with to start initiating legislation or give support so we can report
Sure.
back to the signatories?
First of all, it's really great that you're here at this town hall meeting. Andy wanted to tackle that, Councilman.
So thank you again. Are you familiar with Principal Luis Torres and all of the...
I'm familiar with the petition he circulated.
Right.
It is a different proposal. So again, we are looking to impose a duty to act to call 911 for a
Okay.
limited class, which is...
So let me give you an idea of what has happened. Senator Louis Sepulveda,
Yes.
Assemblymember Victor Pachado, has announced legislation at the state level to create safe haven zones that will force store owners to act, respond, as well as provide a first aid kit in the incident that there is an emergency or someone gets injured. Myself, Councilmember Jonai, and Richie Torres are also proposing legislation at the city level. And last week, I reintroduced safe haven zones where we'll have a number of our storefront owners will get training from NYPD. We started last week that if anyone comes in with a distress, that they will be trained of how to respond, because those first 2 minutes are critical of what happens on saving a life or losing a life. So if you want to sit with us later on to figure out, but the Assembly and the Senate is acting and the City Council is responding as well to make sure that this does not happen again and our store owners get protected and we create safe haven zones throughout the state of New York as well in the city of New York.
Yes, thank you. And I am following the actions taken for that legislation. But again, this is to impose among the community individuals, anyone, not just business owners, to provide a safe haven, but anyone witnessing. Again, like as you are familiar with the story, there was bystanders. Yes.
So let me just say, when you have a tragedy like this, good people step up and say, how can we fix this? And so the work of the state legislators and the city council and your efforts are all necessary. In terms of your legislative initiative, it's the first time I'm hearing about it.
Yes.
But we have a legislative component to the Comptroller's office. If you could leave your name and number with our staff, we would love to review your proposal.
Thank you.
And comment on it. I just don't want to do it tonight because I haven't seen what a bill would look like.
I appreciate you giving us the
No, and thank you for
opportunity.
being thank you for being here.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Stringer.
Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Scott. I thank you for your fire and your compassion for our community and our
Thank you.
citizens. My name is Patricia Long, and I'm a former community board member, Parks chair, and Park steward. I'm here for several reasons. Quality of life issues, and basically to piggyback off of what the woman was saying about the mental health issues, we have been saturated with a lot of mental health. I'm getting nervous, I'm sorry.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Mental health facilities in our community, and we need to know who our neighbors are. Project management reviews need to be reviewed for all mental health and drug facilities and shelters. We need to know who's moving into our neighborhood to protect us. We need the cops to know how to deal with these individuals that are coming into our neighborhood. I have a crisis plan in my hand from the mental health and hygiene on how to deal with people in crisis. This is what cops should have so that they can better service us and our community better. I'm a little nervous here. My cousin, also just to speak on quality of life issues in these stores. A lot of the gang members, what I notice is that they hang out around these stores. They call them ox stores. They all out there. You can't go to this store. This person can't go to that store. My cousin was killed. He was killed on his birthday last year. I'm sure you heard of it. His name was Joshua. He was killed over a Ferragamo bout. He worked in a hospital. He was a good kid. I named him, loved him. He's a very happy, good kid. Stayed in the house, played video games, that type of kid.
Sorry.
So I had asked several years ago with being on the board that we put in play police officers inside these stores because I see the type of action that is occurring in these stores. This was and matter of fact, 2013, it's the papers here, of me trying to get some initiatives in play to protect us all.
So,
So the question is basically, what are we gonna do with these mental health institutions? How are we going to go in and see what's going on to see that they are following the practices and protocol? Because you do see a lot of men hanging around places. It's scary, okay? I recently took a class today, excuse me, I've been up since 5:30, a mental health first aid class because it's scary. It's really scary, especially you don't know who's who. So I'm just asking that you guys go in on foot, see what their protocol, practice, and management is, and help us.
let me say this. This is very helpful for us to understand and for the people up here to understand. If you would do me a favor,
Yes.
if we could get with you tonight,
Yes.
get your contact information.
Yes.
I'll also go to the stores, and I'll do it on the down low, and figure out what's going on in the stores, because what you said to me is a little disturbing, that people are deciding who goes into stores. Let's see if that's...
That's how my cousin was killed. He actually went to the store he shouldn't have gone to on his 22nd birthday and was murdered, stabbed in the block.
sorry.
They recently caught his killer Sunday past, and I'm thankful for that. And I'm looking forward to him because I have many friends that were killed and murdered on these streets. You know, I'm a 70s baby. And I love my community. I remember when we had programs in Force that we went to. We enjoyed the people there. They serviced us. We didn't have a problem with engaging. Compassion was there. Compassion is lacking in our community. Empathy, sympathy too, you know.
All right, let me do this. I got you.
Okay.
We will call you.
Okay.
I know I'm a 60s baby, but I got you, okay?
Thank you so much.
And we'll certainly talk to you, I promise you, tomorrow, okay, before noon.
Enjoy
Okay,
your day.
thank you.
I was living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
Good evening.
My timekeeper, Councilman King, said I have to watch myself because we got to conclude at the right time. So he's asking me to be a better moderator. I need questions, less comment. Is that okay? All right.
Sounds good.
No, it's The Bronx is opinionated, I know. Okay, right, Diva? Okay, yes.
Good evening. I live on Kingsland Avenue near Boston Road, and I've been petitioning the Department of Transportation since 2012 to get a speed bump on Kingsland. And every year they tell me it takes 6 months to investigate, and
where are you at with that?
6 months to
Do
investigate.
me a favor, give me all that information, and we will follow up with DOT. Speed bump, okay.
I'm in a shelter. I understand the program. You don't have education. You're giving your kids programs. You program a robot or a computer. And what you teach them, what you got taught from school, it does not compute. Your problem is that with the young people, graffiti, hire them to clean the graffiti. You got a job, make them responsible. Other ones, those who are 18 and over, protect the old people, protect our leaders, and so on. I was doing that back under Charles Frank when he first started in 1971. I was at Powell. I was with all of those. Pioneer. And okay, K2 is a religion in the shelter. I'm on the Reed 237th Street, Bronx, blah, blah. They fight the police in there. They stab each other.
I know.
We have 4 deaths.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing is that
I'm gonna move. They're demanding
I
that.
have programs being set up for solutions for that, not just to give the problem.
I will talk to you about it.
Thank you. And
Okay.
also, I'm with the small business. I'm studying. I got 3
There.
I just been ordained elder.
Give him a round of applause. Come on. I'm glad you're here. By the way, I want to mention especially to our immigrant community that are so well represented here today that Alia Latif, who's our manager of Muslim and Immigrant Affairs, is here. And she has been reaching out all over the city to the Muslim and immigrant community. Where is she still? Is Alia? Where's Alia? In the back. She's in the back. So if you need her, she's in the back doing her work. Thank you, Alia. I didn't see.
Good evening. My question is for Mr. King. It's also a quality of life issue. As a third-generation homeowner in the Bronx, I've lived here all my life. I've seen the things that are changing. We've all experienced the things that are changing, the homeless, the derelicts. But I've noticed an influx of chop shops on our blocks, cars being fixed on residential areas. You cannot park your car. You're a homeowner, and you are allowed at least one spot in front of your home, and you cannot park because of the chop shops that are in our neighborhood. On my block alone, there are 3 chop shops.
Damn.
What can we do about this in our neighborhood?
First of all, it is against the law to own a chop shop. So what you have to do, as I always say to everyone, you are the eyes and ears of our neighborhood. So I'm saying to us all, if there's a problem happening, you got to let us know. So if we don't know, we can't come and help you fix it. We've done this before with the 47th Precinct, Department of Sanitation, and we've shut down a number of them on their blocks. But the neighbors on that block came to the office, put a phone call, and said, this is what's happening. Can you help us? And we respond. So I'm asking you, get us that information, where it's located, and we'll shut it down.
I cannot tell you how many times I've done it, and we have a church on the block. We've called the police. We've called 311.
Okay, but do me a favor. The
many
councilman
times.
is now saying, get him the information
I
for
will.
tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Hello, how you doing? Hello, how you doing, y'all? I'm James Dobbins. I'm assistant director at Lincoln Hospital. I work at Lincoln Hospital. We have an after-school program. I just want to say hello to all my mentees here, all the kids. Stand up, please.
All right.
We
Give him
have
a
the
round of
kids.
applause.
So,
All right.
So I'm going to be real quick. So I work in the ED.
Give me a question.
Okay, the question is, how can I want to support these programs and keep expanding the after-school programs at Lincoln Hospital. We do music, media, fashion. We have workshops. We have all the department heads, all the professionals that work there. They all have, they all do workshops here at the after-school program at Lincoln Hospital. As you know, we have a new president. Things been downsized and things. It exists at Lincoln
Okay, so
Hospital.
tell
I work in
me-
the ER.
Yes, sir.
So I'm just here to talk to you, talk to Andy King, the Bronx, to let you know we have solutions here. We have young kids here. I bring the youth here because it's important for them. And I want to know how can we continue our program, expand our program. I lost a lot of people to gun violence. My assistant right here, she lost her father to gun violence in the Bronx. So the question is, how can we continue to expand our program to our New York City health and hospitals and have support?
So listen, it's great that you're here. It's great that the young people are here. This is how we have to meet you and you meet us. Give us your information today. Look who's represented. You got the councilman himself here. You got Speaker Heasty's office. They know the community, and we can help. And we can help and work. And by the way, Jamal Bailey, who is going to get here, is represented by my good friend. And I want to say thank you for being here. They're all here to work with you.
Excellent.
So let's get that done. And guys in my office, make sure we get the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good job.
Good evening. My name is Vicki Lewis, and I serve on the CEC 11, the PTA at PS 111, and school leadership team. And we're lacking 600 middle school seats. We're lacking gifted and talented programs from the elementary school to the middle school. We only have one in the Bronx. And we also have a lot of traffic on the Baychester corridor by Truman and all the schools over there. You talked earlier about having thousands of parcels of land. What can we do to get funding to build schools on some of those thousands of parcels of land? We're lacking 600 middle school seats. We have one school, One World Middle School, who wants to become a middle school to a high school. And that would be, we need funding for that. We need buildings for the 600 seats. And we also need to have a solution to the traffic that is on Baychester corridor.
So we can certainly work with you on overcrowding issues. You know, a lot of times the Department of Education will say, hey, the school district is not overcrowded, but then you find the neighborhood and you find out the neighborhood school is overcrowded, and we need to drill down on that. I will work with you on it. If you leave me your info, so if you leave me, I need your information. We have a great, you know, we tangle with the DOE all the time on resources and fairness. The Bronx has not been represented with resources. We talked about this early, 2 standards of education. We have got to treat every borough and every school district equally with resources. If parents are providing resources for science and gifted in one level, then the city has to make it up for schools that just don't have the same resources. It's outrageous that we do not equalize the services. Why? And let me just say this, because I think we have to fight for this. Why should we be in a situation where, depending on the zip code you live in, is the education your children get? It's not right. I'm telling you, it is going to ruin the next generation if we don't own up to the fact that we have a segregated school system and we have to end it, and that's a fact. Let me know, and I will work with you.
My name is Dr. Michael Burke, and I sit on the Parks and Recreation Committee for Community Board 12. And so, again, I would like to thank the councilman as well as the borough president, as well as our district manager, George Torres, and the community board members that are here. My question is the following. It is known that only 1 cent for every dollar that the city raises is into the parks budget. So my question is, what can we do to increase that money for the parks budget? And I noticed because we were just sitting in the budget consultation for the Parks and Recreation Department. So again, is there anything your office can do to maybe increase that funding for Parks and Recreation? Thank you.
So again, let me just make it clear and put pressure on the council and the assembly, whatever. I don't do the money, but here's what we do worry about. The Parks Department has a lot of capital projects under its control, right? The council funds a parks project, and then as a former borough president, I spent millions of dollars funding parks projects that never seem to get completed. That drives up costs. It gives false hope to a community. And what we're now saying with the new Charter Revision Commission that you're going to be hearing about, we have got to have, and I know this is not going to move people to the streets, but we must have procurement reform so that when there is a parks allocation, the money is actually being spent in a timeline that the community sees. I've been called as controller for projects in Manhattan that I funded when I didn't have white hair, right? That was back in 2006. I said, I thought we funded that. It was just coming online 12 years later. So I want to work with the chairs of the Parks Committee. There was an initiative years ago called 1% of the budget for parks. It does go against the fact that we spend 0.4% on senior services. So somehow the mayor and the council have to figure out what works, but what I can do is make sure that money that is spent or appropriated gets spent. And I'll work with you on that if you have specific projects.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Maya Solis. I'm 16 years old. I came with BRAG, which stands for Bronx Rises Against Gun Violence. They are located 4011 Bronxwood Avenue. I am currently an intern at BRAG, and because of this program, I am not in the streets. There are 20 more young adults that BRAG is helping, but we need more funding programs like this. Like I want to know what is being done for the young adults when it comes to programs. When I say program, I mean like programs that help keep us occupied and help us be progressive in life. Like, can we see after-school programs, PAL programs, parks with basketball courts, tennis courts, baseball fields, soccer fields, football fields, NYCHA to have community and recreational centers, libraries with modern technologies, books, more funding to public schools to give students more resources that they need. Like, what is being done about this? What can we do?
I want to say, you know, with all the questions tonight, it seems so reasonable, right? That why shouldn't you have computers, park space, open space, summer job, right? It seems like you're telling us what you need and we're all nodding our heads, and yet we know tomorrow none of those goals are there. And I think it's a shame that the government has failed the kids of the city, and then you get blamed when you have nothing to do, no hope, and no opportunity. The thing I just want to say to you tonight is it's clear that we have a long way to go to make it right by you. And what I want you to do, if I can, is you got to come to these meetings, and you got to demand, and you have to make sure that when you're 18, you're voting and organizing. The whole generation now that's moving on immigration and equal rights and civil rights, it's not my generation anymore, it's your generation. When I started out at your age, I was following my cousin who was a feminist member of Congress, Bella Abzug, and see, you never judge a book by its cover, you never know, right? And I tell you that story because that generation stood up for civil rights and changed the world. You have to do that. And we hear you, and we will be contacting you and BRAG tomorrow so that I can go through your litmus test of what you need. And I'm either going to tell you we're going to get there or we're not, but you're going to hear from us tomorrow. Okay?
Controller, let me just add to your conversation. Controller, young sister, before you go, BRAG, before you go, just want to let you know, and this is to everyone that's in the room as well, as he manages and monitors the money that's being spent, there are a number of agencies, such as yourself, the BRAG, who receives city funding that I fund, as well as a number of summer programs and beacon programs. The city of New York, this year, a historic number for 75,000 youth jobs that we put funding in this year's budget. So I say to all our parents, I say to my sisters, you're involved in something. But there's some of our young people who choose not to walk into the door. So even if we put the funding there, they need to walk into a Richard Green where there's a program. They need to go to Evander where there's a program. They got to go to Academy of Scholarship where there's a program. They got to walk into Truman where there's programs. So we're in a catch-22 while we're still asking for stuff. We need our kids to understand they can't sit in front of a video game all day long and think that they're going to develop their lives. They got to get out. They got to participate. They got to be engaged. And in addition, by 2021, we're going to be opening the first YMCA in this district that we've put over $60 million in the neighborhood. So that's going to help curtail a new program for our seniors and our young people to be more actively engaged. But again, as I always say, people pay attention to people who participate. Tell your young brothers and sisters to show up to meetings like you do and show up to some of the programs that funding is happening.
Well done.
All right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name's Aaliyah Logan. I'm 16 years old. And so I know gentrification is a huge problem. I'll wait. You got thank you. Okay, so I know gentrification is a huge problem throughout the city, like in low-income communities like Williamsburg and also in Harlem. So my question to you is, how are you going to ensure that what is happening in low-income communities throughout the city doesn't happen in the Bronx? So how are you going to ensure it stops, and how are you going to give back homes to low-income communities?
So as I started out tonight, talking about how we build housing for low-income people who, by the way, have lived in our communities and built the communities, made them so valuable that now real estate speculators and people want to move in to the Bronx on the backs of what you've created. I believe that this housing plan is not going to build the affordable housing for the people in the Bronx. So we're giving away the subsidy in the land, and we're building affordable housing, but it's affordable to people beyond the Bronx. We've got to change the AMI of the housing program. The way we do that is we take our vacant land, and rather than give it to a for-profit mega developer who's no longer a developer but is actually a REIT with hundreds of millions of debt service they have to pay, let's give the housing opportunities to the nonprofit organizations that don't have to pay that debt service. Let's create a real subsidy program, and I'm going to be talking about that in the coming weeks, and create the same kind of housing program we built with NYCHA, that we built with Mitchell-Ama, that we built back in the 80s when we had abandonment. The other thing we have to come to terms with is we're never going to deliver for the people in the city who make the least amount of money, but they're just as important as everybody else, until we finally put in place a funding mechanism and a management mechanism in the New York City Public Housing Authority. If we don't do that, we're going to jeopardize 400,000 people who live in public housing.
My question was on short-term rentals. Everybody sometimes they use an extra room that they have or an extra apartment they have for short-term rentals to make ends meet. And what's your stance on short-term rentals like Airbnb and those kind of things? I know in the city there's restrictions on short-term rentals now, but I want to know if that's going to be extended into the boroughs, and what's your stand on that?
Well, when Airbnb, plays by the rules and allows people, we allow people to rent that second room. No one has a problem with that. We want Airbnb to disclose their data so that we can see what is actually going on as we regulate the industry. I did a report on Airbnb and said that one of the contributing factors to a rental process that was not conforming to the law meant that we were seeing rising rents, and that was a contributing factor. Not the only factor. After I issued this report, Airbnb literally bought $1 million in television ads against me. Little old me. How many people saw those ads? Now, to Airbnb's credit, they used a nice picture. So my mother called me up and said, "Son, did you just buy yourself $1 million in ads?" I said, "No, they're actually against me." She said, "They were very nice to you." So if you went Airbnb, you were very respectful. But look, there's a place for everybody, but everyone has to play by the rules. The city council just passed Airbnb legislation that will now mandate disclosure of information and data. I think once they start playing by the rules, there's a place for Airbnb in our community.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming out and being a part of this for us.
Thank you.
I just want to know, my name is Laurel Lawrence. I am a program director for development to develop disabled individuals. And my thing is about safety. I know that when we're making left turns, it's very difficult at Corner Street and Boston Road. There's a lot of accidents on that corner. And my suggestion is, can we look into every left turn, there's an arrow? Because I just think making a right is easier to make a right than a left. And many times I see the MTA buses running the red lights.
All right, let me do this. Andy King.
So I just finished having my conversation with MTA, and they have assured me that we're going to be putting a left signal turn at Connor Street to handle that traffic issue we've been dealing with. Okay? We got it done for you. We started doing.
Come on, listen, you can't win. Come on, all right.
Hi, good evening. Hi, my name is Edwin, and I'm a Generation X. I'm in education and higher education, and I'm a filmmaker as well.
What? So it's millennial, Generation X.
No,
baby.
Generation X, not millennial.
No, I'm saying, but what age is Generation X?
70s, baby, 70s.
Okay. Yeah. All right, good.
After 9/11, my peers and I have struggled professionally. After 9/11, gentrification grew, and as a result of gentrification, from my observation, personal observation, and from my peers' observation, there is regular racism, but there's also discrete racism. Let me explain. Okay, someone will botch up. My supervisor will botch up my evaluation on purpose, and I will not get promoted. Okay. He doesn't have to call me any derogatory names. But those are little things, okay? We cannot ignore them. So I want to know, what can your chief diversity officer and your auditor, what can you do to investigate, not only Latinos, okay, but also African Americans, okay, in the workplace? Because there's been a lot of unemployment. And then there's a lot of idiots who came from out of state who don't know how to interview, okay, and don't know how to manage office problems. They also don't think outside the box. So what can you do? Because if I cannot grow professionally, I cannot make the median salary to move into the housing. I'm still struggling. I don't make more than $20,000 still, and I have a master's degree. So what can you do?
So depending on, I mean, I'm open to your own experiences. One of the values of having a very strong chief diversity operation, unlike any place in city government, it's in the Comptroller's office. I would ask you to contact Wendy Garcia, and between Wendy and Marjorie, we are doing some employment audits right now relating to some sensitive issues that will be coming out. I'm not sure it addresses your specific concerns, but I do think we have to spend more time thinking about workplace protection. Yeah. Clearly, the pay scale for people of color are not actually improving. You heard what I said about women and minority-owned businesses, 4.9% in a city as diverse as us. Look, I get pushback from people who look like me saying, where are you going with this? We said to the money managers of our $195 billion pension fund, I said to them, look, you got to show me numbers. I need to know the gender. I need to know the diversity of the people investing the money at a pension fund. And they said to me, you better be careful because we'll walk away. I said, you can't walk away from a pension fund that's fourth largest in the nation. But here's what I'm telling you. If you don't start diversifying as controller, I'm not doing business with you anymore. How do you like that? Right? And that's how, and what we did, leveraging the pension fund, many of you, how many people in the pension fund? Check is never late. But what we do to make things, we go to the companies that we invest your money, and I say to them, I want to see corporate board diversity, more people of color, more women. And you know why I want to see it? Because it's a civil rights issue. Yes, that's easy to tell you. Yeah. But study after study shows in the workplace at the corporate board level, when you have a diverse workforce and diverse leadership, believe it or not, your company is stronger, which helps my retirees. And you make more money. So why a company, when a company can't show me that, then why should I invest our pension funds? Because they're not going to be successful. And we've led a national campaign. It's called the Boardroom Accountability Act. Go online and see what we've done with public pension funds around the country. It has been a resounding impact. I could talk about this for now, but let me just mention one statistic. When we started our campaign, 6 corporations in America allowed for us to run candidates for the board. After our campaign, after 4 years, 450 companies, mostly Fortune 500, we've now gotten the right to run and change corporate board diversity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Comptroller, and good evening, everyone. My name is Sadie Campbell from the Jamaica Progressive League, and I have one question, and that's regarding the incarcerated that's languishing in these prisons. And they've served their time. They know they're going to be deported. They want to know, why are they still there if there's something that can hurry up the deportation? Because they know that the prisons are big money makers, and they'd like to save money, save you money.
Well, it's a longer answer tonight, but let me just tell everybody here, as controller, I have now divested fully from the private prisons that are holding immigrants and that are holding prisoners. We were the first public pension fund in the United States to divest. New York State just followed us. And I believe that whether it's commercial cash bail or ways that we are targeting immigrants and targeting people of color through the criminal justice system, the only way that we're going to be able to change this system is, in my view, passing legislation that will equalize the playing field. But private prisons have now been supported. This is the first time. We used to build prisons in upstate New York, take black and brown children mostly, ship them upstate, never to reduce crime, but to create an economy around the upstate prison. When I was an assemblyman, I swear to God, these legislators, Republicans, would be high-fiving themselves saying, I got the prison in my district. I was like, why don't you build the school and the daycare center, and that's the way you help kids. You don't ship them upstate. They failed. Those prisons created the worst economy in upstate New York. But they're not done. Now, the billionaires are actually investing in the private prison industrial complex, taking our kids and immigrants who get trapped in the Trump immigration ICE scam, and they're the ones who are languishing. We pulled out. We should do this around the country.
Hi, my name is Marta Rodriguez. I am from Dominican Republic. I love Bronx. This is my house. I want the Bronx become much better, more educated. And also the education, one of my issue is in Bronx, most of the school don't have music. And we have a lot of talents. And they lost the talents because if they don't have...
What's your question?
My question is how we can go to find the school be really have music in the school, like reading and writing, because really...
So listen, we talked about this earlier, but just to say one more time, we have to give all schools arts education. We have to make sure that every school has the same as everybody else. You're absolutely right. Thank you.
Okay.
We are winding down. We've got...
Yeah, I'm last.
This is it. We got two over here.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Marcia Lewis. I'm here to, I also come from White Plains Road, but further south.
Mm-hmm.
My area is inundated with mental health, dumping, homeless, halfway drug rehab houses. But in the past, there were programs that had nurses in the buildings, making sure people took their meds, social workers that were working with the people. What happened to those programs? And also, the increase in homelessness is because of the practices the landlords have been allowed to get away with, the MCI charges that are continuing.
No question.
20% vacancy rate. And the overdevelopment of the smaller communities. Every older home gets bought out, and a 5-story building, 6-story building, the schools are not expanded, the park...
So let me say this. You're sort of wrapping up what we had a discussion about tonight. And we're going to have to organize accordingly and come up with a new viable housing plan and also put pressure on City Hall to change the practice of ignoring communities and coming in and listening to what the problems are. The reason I do these town hall meetings, and it's open mic, there's no script, anyone can come. You know, I don't bring my 750 staffers here to take up the seats. You know, we've got to do more of this. And I think, I hope you think this is valuable for us to talk about. Well, we're going to change that. That's why we're here. All right, sir, you have the last word before everybody goes. But as you get ready, can I just do one thing? So, because I know everyone's going to want to talk. I want to thank the people from the Bronx who work in the Comptroller's office, who are my eyes and ears in this amazing borough. Our director, Marielle de la Cruz. Anderson Ortiz. Victor Martinez, and the leader, Arelis Hernandez Cruz. I also want to thank our special events team. They do more of this work. I don't even know how they get people every other week somewhere, but Asia Meeks and Liz Montesorosa from special events, give them a big round of applause. Let's also give my partner here, Andy King, a big round of applause. It's you, sir.
My name is John DeRiggs. I represent 500 people, homeowners and tenants. The problem is we bought a house in 1990. All the pipes in the backyards are broken, which created sinkholes. Dangerous for us to be in there. I had my lawyer call the city. I was on television, I was in the newspaper, and just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about at a Community Board 2 meeting about the situation. I said, you keep promises, we vote for you, and you turn around and don't do nothing. I said to his face, you fail. All these politicians always telling us they promise everything. HPD now has put up a notice that we can't even go into the backyards at all. But we have to, and if we do, it has to be vacated. If we do, it's unsafe. The problem is this.
Let me do this.
Go ahead.
That's an individual concern.
It's 114 homes, sir.
Okay, but that's still, you know, but rather than go through the trials, tribulations of what's going on, which sounds very serious, we will contact you tomorrow, and we will take the information. And if we can be helpful, depending on the circumstances, we will act in your behalf. Is that fair?
Okay, let me say one thing. The mayor, even at a town hall meeting, said the money is there. Okay? So the problem is our politicians say, vote for us, and we vote for them, and we get nothing since 1990. So when you go to vote, be careful who you vote for, because they're always promising. And my son came in to use his yard. I want to pass it on to him.
Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to contact you tomorrow.
Okay.
And I know when you said that about the politicians, you weren't talking about me or Andy, but it was the others. It was the others. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to thank all of you for coming. I've loved this Bronx night. We'll be back, and I thank you very, very much. Thank you.